It's another player signing, and with it, we are bringing back yet again another Cyclones defenseman, Wyatt Ege, back for his second year with the Clones, third year as a pro after spending the first overseas. And Wyatt, let's start with this. Coming back to the Cyclones here in Cincinnati, what was your reasoning, and ultimately, when did you decide that coming back to Cincy was the right choice for you?
Yeah, I think about middle of the summer. I was just talking to Painter and Bez and a couple of guys on the team, and it was such a good time last year. We had a really good core group of guys, and it just sounded like the right spot for me.
Well, I know you talk about the core group of guys, and obviously that starts with its leadership, right? Louis Caparuso, Dejan Mingo, obviously the captain, Justin Vive, those guys all already coming back. We can tell the fans right now that after this announcement comes out, there will be, spoiler alert, a few more returnees still yet to be announced. But Wyatt, when we were talking to those guys, the veterans and the leaders, they cited consistency as really an element of this team that, while the group had fun last year, that's something that they wanted to rectify going into this season, not winning 3 or 4 games in a row and then turning around and dropping 3 or 4 in a row. I mean, as a guy who was here all season, pretty much, how important is consistency when you go into this upcoming campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Obviously, Cincinnati's had really good hockey over the past couple of seasons, and at the end of the day, we started off really well, but we kind of had a midseason lull. We were up and down for a while there. We ended up making playoffs, so we made it there. We were in playoffs playing Toledo, and we were so close. But at the end of the day, we just weren't consistent enough, and I think that's kind of what the guys were talking about after the season, and we're kind of hungry for more.
Do you think it helps you having a second year here? I mean, you talk about consistency. I kind of looking at your stats, and obviously, 28 points in 63 games with the Cyclones. You had 2 AHL call-ups, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But were there any challenges for you maybe as we got toward the end of the season? I mean, just looking at it, with playoffs, you played over 70 games. That's the most you've ever played in a season, and it's the most you've played since, I believe, junior hockey in, 14, 15 in the USHL. So for you, going 6, 7 years in between such a long season, did it get more challenging as it went on?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a lot. Coming out of college, you only play a handful of games every season. The pro life is just a little bit different. You got to take care of your body. You don't really have a whole lot of people, watching over you and making you do everything, like go to class and other things. So, I think being back for a second season, especially back in the same city, that's pretty rare in professional sports to stay in the same place for 1, 2, 3 years. There's a lot of movement usually. So being back there, being comfortable with the coaching staff, being comfortable with the players, it'll be a lot better.
Well, I think what's also cool, and you're not wrong about that, especially when you look at the minor leagues, it feels like guys are on 1-year contracts and they hop around 5, 6, 7 teams in as many seasons. For you, you get to come back here, and I think it means something when there's value shown at the level above you. So the Cyclones being affiliated with the Rochester Americans, you had a 3-game AHL call-up there. There was also the connection with Matt Thomas that got you an opportunity to play for Providence for a couple of games as well. How important did it mean to you, I guess, to see and know you obviously have the confidence in your game, but to then see that get rewarded with opportunities at the AHL, which I imagine you're optimistic that there will be more opportunities at the higher levels?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the goal. That's the goal for me. I think that's the goal for most players, especially the younger guys, is just trying to get to the next level. Using this as a stepping stone, having a couple good seasons, and hopefully you're getting that call up, and hopefully you're sticking at one of those top teams, and keep climbing. I mean, our goal since we were little kids was to make it to the NHL. Everybody's still dreaming about it. Whether it's realistic or not, we don't know, but we're pushing for it every single day. That's what gets me to the rink, and that's what makes me want to play hockey every day. So I think it's really important to be back. It's I'm happy that we have all these relationships with Buffalo and Matt Thomas, and I'm happy that I got there, but I'm not satisfied yet.
I think that's the right answer. Obviously, the ideal goal is to stay there. You mentioned it, whether it's a player, broadcaster, painter, and Bez as coaches, everybody is trying to get to the summit. winning will get you there, and winning will help get you there. And we saw with the Florida Everblades winning the Kelly Cup this past season, the Cyclones with that same ambition going into 22-23. When we talk about, we mentioned consistency, you mentioned wanting to come back because of the group. I mean, how cool is that? Not only, for you yourself as an individual getting to return to the same team for consecutive seasons, but I mean, you're going to look around this year at the locker room and almost everybody's the same person from a year ago. I feel like we talk about consistency, and we're talking about the on ice wins and losses and consistency in that. But there's something to be said for consistency in the dressing room with the same voices and faces as they're not.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, especially we were talking about it earlier in minor sports. You kind of look at the ECHL and there's a lot of movement. So if we can stick with the same familiar faces and build on that, I think we'll be in a really good spot.
Yeah, I think that obviously the consistency there, consistency with the affiliations. One thing that was pretty cool, and I think we had it on a consistent basis for the most part, were the crowds. Your first year in Cincinnati, mine as well. Sometimes 8, 9, 10,000 people in the stands. I mean, it's an intangible, right? But when you feel that adrenaline, like that's a real thing. I don't know for you, whether it was at Ohio State or in junior overseas, where were these crowds at Heritage Bank Center like, I guess, compared to previous stops you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky to be in some pretty good spots.
Yeah.
In Fairbanks, Alaska, my first year in juniors, we ended up winning the championship, and they had a really good crowd too. But that rink was only seating, 3, 4, 5,000. Kind of the same thing in Dubuque. Dubuque was probably around 5, 6,000 too. So when I went to college, I played in some pretty big games against the rival Michigan was always a big game for us, and luckily enough, we made it to the Frozen Four one year. So I was at the XL Energy Center in Minnesota, and that was a really big crowd too because we were playing Duluth, and they were kind of like the home team. So, but nothing beats the Heritage Bank when you have 10, 12,000 fans and they're all on your side. Usually at these other places, it was hit or miss, half. But at the Heritage Bank, we were lucky enough to have all Cyclones fans. So, when you have 12,000 people cheering for you, makes it a little bit easier to play. That's for sure.
The Heritage Bank Center, of course, set to be rocking again here in a couple of months. What about, as we kind of talk about your season here, and we mentioned the AHL, we've sprinkled in some playoff talk. What was that like? I mean, again, we've talked to a couple of guys about it. It's hard to, I guess, reflect on it positively given the ultimate outcome. But what a series. I mean, it felt like such a battle all throughout. I mean, what was it? I think 3 or 4 of the games ended up, it may have been the first, well, I know it was the first 3 games were all 1-goal games, 2 of them needed overtime. I mean, that was a war, a pretty fun one, a pretty competitive one too.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in that close of a battle and every game is, one little mistake and you're losing the game. So, it was really fun to be a part of. And I think I learned a lot, especially just being my first year in it. I've never been, I guess in Slovakia, we had a 7-game series, but it didn't really go our way. We lost 4-1, so it wasn't really close at all. But being in a close series, especially a 7-game series, growing up, I would watch all the NHL playoff games. And, you always see, the guys scoring in the game 7, overtime and that stuff. But, being in one of those series and actually playing in it, it's way different than just watching it. That's for sure.
Can you remember, I guess, the feelings then going into game 7? Because I think even myself up in the booth, it was like before the game started, I was like, this is going to mean something. Like, this is what we've dreamed of, right? Like being a part of a game 7.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, when you're in the moment as a player, you're not really nervous. There's not a lot of stuff like that going on. You've seen the team 6 times already. There's a lot of battles being hashed out there in game 7. But I think the one thing that's the most important is just you don't want to be the one little mistake that loses the game, obviously. But when you're on the ice, you're not playing like that. That's all out the window. And, you're just trying to stick to your systems. You're trying to play consistent, like we've talked about. And, you're just hoping that your systems get you there. That's for sure.
Well, as we near the end of this conversation, you talk about how cool that was. Now we're coming back and getting ready to get back to it. So I'll ask you, I mean, we were joking a little bit off air. You've obviously got a party going on in the back. I mean, you are having a good time. Party going on in Minnesota. So, I mean, tell the fans, we haven't seen you in a few months. Where have you been? What are you up to? What's keeping you busy as we get ready and fasten up here for October?
Well, I luckily enough, one of my best friends ended up playing hockey overseas in Nottingham with this guy named Chris Stewart. He played 668 NHL games.
Yeah, I recognize the name.
Skill guy, fighter. But lately, the past little bit here, I've just been up in this log cabin. We've had like a 5-week camp, so I'll give you a little tour of it. We got this is Jack over here somewhere.
There's Jack.
See him? Jack. We got Bailey and Paige just came in. And then we got my best friend. He's in the back over there in the red hoodie. So he was a goalie. Actually just retired. And now he's the GM of the NA3 team up here. And then, luckily enough, in the summer, we kind of have a little spot to come and all help out for the MN hockey camps. I guess I'll give him a free ad, but that's
look at this.
Yeah, that's the MN hockey camps. I'm all decked out. Where's this thing? Over here.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
All over the place. I don't know how to work this camera, this technology. I got my tech guy over here. But other than that,
a phone and a laptop, very difficult pieces of technology to work with. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Especially in nowhere, Minnesota. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. You know what? Nobody has given us such an immersive interview to see where they are and how the magic is happening. And I guess this is what's, getting you ready. But obviously, I mean, in terms of before we let you go here, your off-ice workouts and your off-season routine, how did that work? I know our season ended at the beginning of May there with that game 7. How much did you spend kind of getting the R&R before ramping up to be ready for another season?
Yeah, so right away I kind of took a month and a half off, just from hockey. You're kind of still trying to keep the body in shape. You can still work out. Luckily enough, I didn't have a whole lot of bumps and bruises from the playoff run like other guys did.
Yeah.
So took a little bit off, and then luckily enough, like I've been saying, but Chris Stewart has his hockey camp up here, so there's ice from 6 a.m. skate all the way to 10 o'clock at night, and there's a weight room that's always open. So luckily enough, I've been able to kind of do whatever I want up here whenever I want. So that's the nice part for me.
Well, awesome to hear, Wyatt, and awesome to see you again. Cyclone season is going to be kicking off on the road in October, and at the end of the month, Saturday, October 29th, the Iowa Heartlanders come to town for first face-off at the Rocking Heritage Bank Center. You can go to cycloneshockey.com to get your tickets. Again, that's another player signing, Wyatt Ege. Eggs, great to see you again. Great to meet the Minnesota gang behind you, and we look forward to having you back here in the Queen City in just a couple of months.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. See you soon.